September 19th, and I am recording this lesson for a couple of students who are out. We're going to start with the homework, and then we're going to go from the homework to an introduction of a project, then a quiz, and then our lesson. So, let me tell you first about the homework. For your homework, you are going to read lesson 9. There are 2 chapters on the American Revolution, and this is the first one. So the first half of the Revolution. Yes?
I think I did the wrong one because I don't recognize any of those.
This is homework. You should not have seen these before.
Oh, okay. I thought it was Tuesday.
I just show you the homework first. And then, no, what you have in front of you should be Benjamin Franklin and the Enlightenment. Do you have your note cards? Okay, well, both of you guys are going to be getting a homework slip today for not having your note cards. All right, so lesson 9, first half of the American Revolution. Raise your hand if you've ever studied the Revolutionary War in your life or read about it. Please raise your hands. I'm sure you guys have ever read about the founding of our country. This is like the beginning of America. You've never ever read anything about George Washington? About Hamilton, there you go, Hamilton. If you've seen Hamilton, you've done some beginnings of our country. So we are going to have the history of the Revolutionary War split in half and covered over two sets. The second part of the homework will be assigned on Wednesday, and I will actually only give you 1 chapter to read on Wednesday because it's the second half of the Revolutionary War. And we are not putting anything else on there. That is full enough to handle. So you have some note cards to do. On Wednesday, it'll be about the same amount of note cards for the second half. Okay. I am about to assign you your first project. Your first project is on the Revolutionary War. I have given you a question on Google Classroom that I want you to answer. It's just going to be a phrase or a sentence or something. But when you answer the question, you are going to be deciding what would you like to do for your project. Do not answer this question until you've done your homework. Don't answer it until you have, basically you've gotten your feet wet with the whole American Revolution and you're thinking about it. Once you've done your homework, peek ahead at lesson 10 so you know what gets covered in lesson 10. And that will help you to have your options. What event or what character in the American Revolution do I want to learn a little bit more about? So wait till you've done this and then go to Google Classroom and answer this question. If you have already answered the question on Google Classroom accidentally, just go back and edit it after you've done it because I know who already answered it and I sent you back a note and I want you to redo it for me, okay? All right, so I want to show you really fast where do you find this on Google Classroom. In case you're not familiar with Google Classroom, this is your Google Classroom. When you are looking at your Google Classroom, there are 3 places, currently 3 places you can find the homework question I just posted up. One is that since I just posted it, it happens right now to be at the top of the stream. So you could click right here. It would take you right to the question. The other one is, since it is upcoming, it will appear in a side box right here that says upcoming, due Wednesday by 8 a.m. I say 8 a.m. because I want you to do it before Wednesday. Like, do it for your homework. Don't wait until Wednesday morning to do it. Just get it done ahead of time. So you can also click right here. But then the last way, and this is what you'll have to do if for some reason you miss the deadline. You'll have to go here and click on classwork. And then it will take you to posted assignments, and you will see that currently this is the only thing that's posted here under my projects tab, and it's that question. So that's 3 different ways that you could find this question if you needed to. Any questions on your homework? Everybody good? Everybody know where it is? All right. Then let's go on. Today, for our prayer, we are going to use a Bible passage from the book of Ephesians, and I'll explain why. Our lesson today, the topic of it is the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment was not a Christian movement. You guys know that from reading this, right? It was not a Christian movement. It was a movement to figure out how can you find truth without reference to God or the Bible. But the idea of enlightenment is a Bible idea. And so for our prayer, we're going to use a passage from the book of Ephesians, which is a prayer that Paul prayed for the church at Ephesus. Ephesus was a little town. That's why it's called Ephesians. The prayer that he prayed for them for enlightenment, because I wanted you to be able to contrast the French Enlightenment ideas with Bible Enlightenment idea. Okay? So I am going to read you this prayer, and you can read along with me, like just with your eyes, because I'm going to read it slowly, so hopefully you can understand this. But it is perhaps one of my favorite passages in the Bible. I love Paul's language. I love how he almost falls all over himself to say something. If you've ever read Ephesians 1, it's a little bit rambly. It's like he has more to say than he can figure out how to put, so he just puts it all into one sentence, one giant sentence in Ephesians chapter 1. You might read a Bible that cuts it into multiple sentences just to simplify it, but originally written, it's one enormous sentence. So that's how Paul felt about the people he was talking to. And I will read to you this prayer as our starting prayer. For this reason, ever since I heard about your faith in the Lord Jesus and your love for all of God's people, I have not stopped giving thanks for you, remembering you in my prayers. That is the end of the sentence, but now he starts. I keep asking that the God of our Lord Jesus Christ, the glorious Father, may give you the spirit of wisdom and revelation so that you may know him better. I pray that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened in order that you may know the hope to which he has called you, the riches of his glorious inheritance in his holy people, and his incomparably great power for us who believe. I'm going to stop and say amen to that. And I hope you guys can say amen to that. But let me point back to the enlightenment. He is praying that the eyes of their heart would be enlightened. You don't have eyes in your heart. So we're going to have to sort of say, it's like a way of saying that your spirit would be enlightened. Something inside of you would be enlightened. And enlightened so that you would know the hope to what God has called you. And the fact that he has a wonderful, glorious inheritance, a future for you. And he has great power, which he uses on our behalf. The exact opposite of what the deist thought, right? We just read about the deist. This is what Paul's saying right here is using the idea of enlightenment and the opposite of deism. But we're going to study today the historical context where enlightenment was seen differently and the view of God is different from us. So before we do that, let's all say we're so glad that this is actually what God thinks and what he's revealed to us. And if we can say amen to this, then we can move on and learn about the enlightenment. Can y'all say amen? Amen. All right. Your project. I am going to give each side papers, and if you can just pass them back and then pass me the extras. So make sure your table has some and then pass them back. This is your American Revolution project. It's due on October 3rd, which isn't actually a terribly long time from now, a couple of weeks from now. It is simple, but there's a lot of creative options. And here are the creative options. you are going to pick a favorite character or event, and I say favorite. Pick a character or event from the American Revolution, and you're going to do one of the following. You will either create a shoebox display. You guys know what those are? Take a shoebox, turn it on its side, and then you make a scene basically. You could use things you have, toys in your house in that scene, or you could create, you could take an image like this, shrink it down to size, print it off, color it, cut it out, and then put a piece of cardboard behind it so it could stick up. And then you can decorate, inside the shoebox. You can also put little trees, and you just sort of stiffen them up with cardboard so that they'll present like that. So it's a 3D. Shoebox display is a 3D thing. So you can create a shoebox display or a poster. The poster, you can do an entire poster, but I would just assume that you cut your poster in half and do just half a poster. Unless you really need all that space. You don't need to make a giant, enormous poster. Or you can write a paper. Now, before you smirk at that idea, there are people who really do not love doing creative projects and prefer to write papers. So for that reason, I like to give you the option of writing a paper if that's what you would prefer to do. Either way, you're going to be able to do the same project, whether you choose shoebox display, poster, or paper. Yes?
What could you put on a poster?
Oh, okay. So you have something, you're going to pick a person or an event. You can pick a person like George Washington, or you can pick an event, Washington crossing the Delaware. So either one. You pick a person or you pick an event, and I want you to do a little research on it and to find 5 historical details that you would like to tell your class, tell me, tell yourself, just 5 historical details about that person or about that thing. That's it, really. It's just sort of learning some more about an event. However, you are not going to learn all 5 details from one source. If you're new, you really need to listen to me here. I know that you can read almost any book or website and find 5 things about history on that thing, but you're not going to do that because you are required to have at least 3 sources. And the reason I require that is because I want you to read broadly, not just to do a presentation on some website. I want you to read multiple things and then out of that put together, here are the things I want to say about this person. That's more of what history people do. Yes?
For a bibliography on a book, do you just want us to look at
No. Definitely not. All right, so I'll go to the bibliography because I just was saying about the sources. Minimum of 3 sources, websites or books. I would like them to be in bibliography form, which means raise your hand if you really have never done a proper bibliography in your life. Like this is brand new to you. Anybody? Okay, a couple of you. So the whole trick to it, okay, because you weren't doing it. If you didn't do it right last year, then you should still be thinking. Okay, this time. The whole trick to it is that you figure out how to use these kind of websites. EasyBib, I often use that. BibMe, MyBib, I just gave you a couple of different choices. Pull up one of these websites, and you're going to be creating a bibliography, and they'll have a drop-down choice where you can either put a website in or a book, or whatever. And you post in there the information you have, which might be the URL to a website, or it might be the name and author of a book. You just type that in, and it magically creates for you the exact formatting for a proper bibliography. And you just do it for all 3 of your things, and then put it on some sort of Word document and print it off. That's as tricky as it is. You need to learn how to use this sort of thing. I do not want you to turn into me websites like history.com. That doesn't help me at all. I should be able to look at your bibliography and find whatever you used and double check your source. So for instance, if I think that you're using the exact language from a website, which is inappropriate, Ms. Pilson will reinforce this. You cannot use language directly from some website. You have to put things in your own words. So if I think that, and I look at it, and this has happened plenty in class for me, and I look and I think, that's not the way a 7th grader talks. I might go back and look at the source that it came from and see if you just copied something straight from the website. And then you get in trouble. And we have big talks and blah, blah, blah. And you don't want to do that. But that's part of, I should be able to use your bibliography to see where you got your information. Is that good? Y'all understand what I'm saying? That's the point of a bibliography. So other people can see where you got your information. I had jumped to the bibliography at the end to go back up here. If you do a shoebox display, it's just like a picture, right? You've just created a picture. You need to bullet point the 5 things that you learned, 5 history things. Just bullet point them and type or write them and put them on the back of your display. Same for your bibliography. Just paste it to the back of your display. If you're doing a poster, if your 5 points are not on your poster, I kind of assume they will be. Like, I don't know what else you're going to talk about, but like maybe you did a poster and you just drew a picture. Okay, the 5 points need to go on the back if they're not on the front. And the bibliography should also go on the back. If you do a paper, just make sure you have 5 things in your paper and you have your bibliography at the end of your paper. Regardless, same standard for everybody. And what are you graded on? Literally this. This is what you're graded on. Did you do this? 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 I'm not grading you on anything about like, I'm not grading you on anything weird. It's not just some, like you'll get a good grade on this if you do what it says right here for you to do. And a good grade on a project is awesome because it's the easiest way to get a good grade. Creative, interesting, and pretty predictable. Unless you basically don't do something on here. Any questions about the project? No? No questions? All right. It's time for our map quiz. Leave your note cards, sort of close your notebook otherwise. Oh, and I'm sorry, that project can go under your projects tab. You have a projects tab, right? Handouts. It can go under handouts. Project sheet can go under handouts. We're going to have a map quiz. Let me show you that the map quiz, on the map quiz, I have a map. It looks similar to what you've seen before. It has letters and numbers on it. The letters are the oceans. The numbers are the continents, the directions, the equator. I am going to give you this. It is a word bank that has mixed up all of the continents, oceans, directions, and everything right here. Then it has blanks. The blanks are first A through E, and then 1 through 12. That is where you are not matching. You are writing the answers over here. If you would like to earn 5 extra points and do it without this word bank, you can. Now, you have to remember everything out of your head that way. You can't use these as prompts. But if you want to do that, then take out a piece of paper, and on your piece of paper, write your name, and then write A through E and 1 through 12. You need to letter A through E and number 1 through 12. If I do not see a piece of paper in front of you with that on it, I'm going to hand you a word bank, and you need to write your name on the word bank. If you decide you want to switch, that's fine, but it needs to be done pretty quickly. Yes?
What numbers did you
A
say?
through E, A, B, C, D, E, and then 1 through 12. A through E, 1 through 12. Spelling does not count against you. Make sure you write your name on the paper if you're doing your own paper. A through E, 1 through 12. You're doing it yourself. It doesn't matter. I don't care. You're either getting this, like it's like half and half. It doesn't matter. I don't care.
It's 1, 2, 3.
It's either going to be A through E or it's 1 through 12. The answers are here that you're putting in the right blanks, or you're doing it out of your head. You get 5 extra points for this, which doesn't actually completely replace one of the questions. There are fewer than 20 questions, so they'll count a little bit more this time. But it'll replace most of something you get wrong. All right. Did you write your name then? Nate, sorry. Nate, did you write your name? All right. Make sure you have your name on your own piece of paper. Is that?
I didn't get
Well, you just wrote all that stuff on the paper.
I thought you handed
Do you want one of these?
No.
Okay.
I thought you handed out.
No, I'm about to hand out the maps. When you finish, just stay where you are. I will come and collect these from you. When you get this, you can go ahead and begin. Remember, you're not talking because you got quizzes out. If you finish, you can just study through your note cards, look at your project sheet, any of these things. History stuff. Those of you at home, this is when you get your map quiz from your parent. right, folks, we are now moving on to your coming to your homework. So get out your note cards and please make sure you have 12 on them. Pretty easy.
I just did
That was a big sneeze. I really expected it to feel like a little, but it was like.
Okay, guys. Just stand here. Okay, we're talking today about an 18th century movement that looked to human reason instead of to God. We know this movement as, Nate, the Enlightenment. I'm going to show you a couple of pictures briefly. Audrey, if you'll turn off the lights. When you see the Enlightenment, you're supposed to think about people all grouped together, peering around, looking into their, looking at something together. But you also should be thinking about all these famous pictures you've seen of like the American Revolution, people coming together to talk about brand new ideas. This one's familiar, isn't it? Signing of the Declaration, yeah. So these famous pictures are all considered Enlightenment pictures. Now, I will point out that there are people missing from these pictures. This was democratic in a lot of ways, like anybody can think about truth, but it really was only men. You don't really see women in these pictures, and you don't see anybody who's not a white landowning man. Nevertheless, it was a improvement over, kind of previous times when only the most elite people were allowed to think about ideas. But still, this is maybe a French Enlightenment picture. I think we can turn the lights back on here. Oh, wait, before you do, look at Voltaire. Voltaire has such a, I don't know if it's a wig or his real hair, but wow, look at those curls. Long, yeah, it's like a poodle, doesn't he? Okay, you can turn the light back on. So the name of the guy who is most known, most famous for the Enlightenment is Francois Voltaire. And French names are so much fun to say. I want you guys to try it yourself. Francois, yes?
Yeah, last year we had French class and we got to choose our names and they had like Jackie or something like that.
What was your name? Jacques?
No, it was, I forgot.
Francois. Everybody try Francois. And then Voltaire. Voltaire. Francois Voltaire. We're gonna have another one in just a minute, a different Enlightenment person. But Francois Voltaire. Voltaire wanted to liberate people from
The Roman Catholic Church.
Yes. Now, why the Roman Catholic Church? Because he was French. Remember, all these countries had their own church that was the church. And for the French, it was the Roman Catholic Church.
Yeah, he wanted to do that because freedom of church, freedom of religion.
Yeah. It's very important to him. The religious freedom was important to him. But stop and just think first, before we get to the fact that he did care about religious freedom, think first about how he wanted to free people from the church and the state having so much power over the way people thought. He wanted people to think for themselves. That was his whole goal. You think for yourself. You read things. You get educated. You can read things and figure them out for yourself. That was Voltaire's entire Enlightenment idea. All right. The book tells us that he was a deist. What is a deist? Robert?
A deist is someone who believes that God created the universe, created it, and is free to choose or not.
Right. Is a deist a Christian?
Well, yes.
They would claim they
Actually,
are.
yes.
They would claim they are.
No, because
They don't
they
believe God's
believe.
with you. Then
No, but they believe that God created the earth.
So are you a Christian because you believe that God created the earth? Do the deists believe that people have relationships with God?
no.
No, that's kind of like basic deism is that you don't have a relationship with God. What's another word you could use for their idea of God? If you wanted to use a different word, you're like,
Evolution. Evolution.
well, not really evolution. It doesn't have to be evolution, but how did they saw God as what? Well, we didn't say.
Well, he's all powerful too, but he's not always with you. He
Yeah.
doesn't have a personal relationship.
Right. So like a creative force. Like God is definitely powerful. Like, but he's more of a creative force than he is God the way we understand him.
Unless if they believe that he just, after he created the world, the universe, then
Mhm.
that means they don't believe in Jesus, but he sent his son
Yeah.
after.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I don't know how you can be a Christian if you don't actually think that Jesus matters. Like you could be a God, you could be a person who believes in a God. That's what a deist is, but not really a Christian, since Christian sort of implies Christ.
Yeah.
Like it's like about knowing Christ or about at least something that Christ did for you. Okay, so deism is where he was. Now, he was a smart guy, a really good writer, and he saw some problems with the church and with the state that were legitimate. He was not making this stuff up. So only if you raise your hand to say something, only tell me one of the things. All right, Nate, what's one of the things he saw as a problem?
Religious rule.
Yeah, there were tons of them, lots of religious wars. Zach.
The Inquisition records feelings.
Yes, the Inquisition, what's another word for what they did in the Inquisition? Torture. Yeah, so he sort of had a problem with the church torturing people. Like he thought it was
That's not a
bad
church.
that priests were torturing people. Do you guys think that's true?
That's not. If
You'd agree
they were
with
torturing people, that wouldn't be a church.
I mean, they were like the leaders of the church,
Uh,
the priests, so there were some real problems, right? Okay, Joshua?
greed.
Greed, yes. And there was definitely people that were in positions of power, both in the state and the church, that were greedy. That's a real problem. What else? What other problems do you have? Leslie? Yes. Wrestling with authority. Audrey? Uh-huh. And there was lots of that. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And the French government was unfairly biased to the rich.
Right. Now, none of you guys mentioned that really crazy story that that he said. Do y'all remember reading about it?
It was like this guy, and he was, I think he like killed his son or something, or he was put on trial because they thought he killed his son for being Catholic, or
Yeah.
one of the other religions,
Yes.
and but he ended up, I think,
Yes, exactly. And his name, it's on here. His name was Jean Calais. That's again a French name. They pronounce the J's like Jean. So Jean, it's not Calais, it's Calas. Jean Calas, who was tortured because somebody said, "Your son, the guy was murdered." Well, you murdered your son. No, I didn't. Like he's already sad that his son is dead. Now he's being told he murdered him. He's like, "I didn't murder him." They're like, "Yes, you did." Well, so they tortured him to make him say that he had done it, and it didn't matter what they did to him. He still was like, "I didn't murder my son. I didn't murder him. I'm not going to say I didn't." And they basically tortured him to death. The guy died from the way he was being treated, and Voltaire thought it was not fair. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, so he would, so He would have, yeah, it would have been probably easier. So Voltaire thought it wasn't fair. He thought it wasn't fair that this guy got tortured. He thought it wasn't fair that he didn't get a proper trial. He just thought the whole thing wasn't fair. Voltaire was really about fairness. And the Enlightenment is about giving people the freedom to think their own thoughts and for society to be fair. And that didn't happen. So this is what I want you to remember. So there's some really good things about the Enlightenment. There are things that we depend on as a culture. We don't want to live in a world where somebody who's maybe crooked and is in power can just torture people without any consequences. You know, we want to live in a place where there's fair trials and all of that. I'm going to skip the excerpt from Candide unless we have extra time, but Candide was actually really clever and super interesting. All right. We've already said that Voltaire was not a Christian, but he promoted religious freedom. What is up with that? Why would this guy who's not a Christian promote religious freedom? Harper. Yes. He didn't like the fact that people would be tortured to death. He thought there should be open conversations. You know, we should all just generally respect each other. He's very modern, right? Do you hear modern thinking in that? We should be able to respect other people's opinions. We today are a society that's the product of the Enlightenment. Our society, our American society, is really built on the ideas of the Enlightenment, including the idea that people from other faiths and other religions ought to be able to live at peace and at harmony with, you know, even if we disagree with them. We should be able to respect each other and not kill each other over a difference in faith. That's the effects of the Enlightenment. It was not like that before now, which is really might be crazy to think about, but it really wasn't like that before the Enlightenment. So she already said this answer. That is true. All right. Voltaire was not the only major thinker. The other one, does anybody know French enough that you want to try to pronounce this right? You want to try because you took French?
Jean-Jacques Rousseau.
That's
I
perfect.
can't pronounce it.
You did it just right. All right, so everyone try to say his name. The J's are J. So Jean-Jacques Rousseau. This is an E-A-U says O. Jean-Jacques Rousseau. So he wrote romantic novels, which is kind of crazy, that promoted the ideas that nature could teach people to be good. All right, so now we get to the heart of Jean-Jacques Rousseau's idea about people being a noble savage. Think about these words. Nate, you're not listening very well. Noble savage. Noble, noble, noble. Is that good or bad? Good. Savage.
No.
We think of it as bad, but if you make the savage as noble, then you say they can't help it, right? A noble savage. All right, Wesley, what's a noble savage idea? He was born what? People are born, Avery?
Born good.
Good. Yes. He was born good, and what was the last thing he said?
Until society interfered.
Yes, until basically the world made him bad. Can you stop making noises, please? He said man is born naturally good, and then society basically ruins him. Left alone, man would be free and noble. Now, is this true? Think for a minute about this whole idea. When people are born, are they essentially good people?
No. There's no sense.
It's the opposite of the Christian doctrine of having a sinful nature. The doctrine of a noble savage is actually the exact opposite of the Christian doctrine. A noble savage, basically people are good. It's just society ruins them. The Christian doctrine, Zach says what? And then, what's your hope? Okay, but what's your hope for like not like being a completely rotten person your whole life and wrecking society? Like if we're born sinful people, like, oh well, we're all sinners. What are we just gonna all like kill each other all the time and we're savages, we're all savages, we can't do anything about it? Does Christianity give us any more hope than that?
Well, you can get forgiveness of our sins.
Yeah, and what happens? What's the process of transformation called? Yeah, so accepting Jesus and he transforms us. As you may know, it's a big S word. Sanctification, right. Like Clayton. Sanctification, it's like that's what happens. Like as we're going along, we're becoming more like Jesus. The hope is that we're not going to all kill each other because God is at work in us. Not deism. God is at work. That's the not deism part of it. So Rousseau's idea of the noble savage, you hear this all the time in society. In fact, you know so many people who think that people are born basically good. And it's really just sort of society that wrecks them. That's a very common thought today, Rousseau's thought. All right, Benjamin Franklin was also an Enlightenment thinker. Not in France, like Rousseau and Voltaire. He was in our country. You guys know of him. But he spent time in France as a diplomat. So he was very connected to the writings and the thinkings of the Enlightenment people. In fact, the founding of our country was very related to the Enlightenment. So, what are 3 of his accomplishments? You know what? There's so many. I'm just going to show you like my slide, but you guys could have other things. There's so much about Benjamin Franklin in the chapter. I wrote the question just to make sure you were reading to kind of glean some of the stuff that Franklin did. He Poor Richard's Almanac, he wrote for a newspaper, invented the lightning rod, Postmaster General, all this stuff in Philadelphia. He did a lot of stuff before he became really famous. He's an inventor, all that stuff. This is some pictures from Poor Richard's Almanac from 1737, 1733. And you can still find copies of Poor Richard's Almanac today. Maybe in Williamsburg, you could see it in one of the shops. It's the sort of thing you'd see there, right? So here's a little ditty from him. Take it from Richard, poor and lame. What's begun in anger ends in shame. He was known for his witty phrases like, a penny saved is a penny earned. That's a Benjamin Franklin saying. There's a lot of little, Clayton, a lot of little quotes like that. All right, he went to the British House of Commons as a colonial statesman. I'll put this question in here because you're going to see how related he is to the Revolution. Ridgely, do you have something that he spoke about in the British House of Commons? So that is what he wanted the American group to do, but they didn't take his idea. Remember, they were like, no, we don't want to do that. He basically wanted them to become a Congress, which is really cool, except they said, no, we don't want to give power to basically the federalized government. So do you want me to go on to somebody else, or did you have another one you wanted to try? Okay. Joshua.
The colonies needed to be centralized.
That's what he said to the British House of Commons. British House is when he went overseas and he talked to the British people about what was going on in America. You're saying the same sort of thing that Ridgely was saying, which is like, what was he saying to the Americans or the colonists properly? They weren't Americans yet. But what did he say to the British, Avery? is bad. He spoke out about that. And then Nate, the other thing, that was the Stamp Act. No taxation without representation was the Stamp Act. So that's one thing together. He said we shouldn't be taxed without representation. Does anybody have a different thing he talked about? Yes. He said we'll pay for the tea. Sorry about that Boston Tea Party. We'll pay for the tea. We shouldn't have done that. And he was right about that. That was a little crazy. American colonists
And
dressing
didn't
up like Indians, going in, dumping tea, all in protest.
It didn't even work because they did the intolerable acts for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They
it
ended up
backfired.
having to, it was backfiring. So he was a negotiator with England. He was trying to negotiate all of this. If you only put about the Stamp Act and taxation without representation, make sure you add the second thing. He also spoke out about saying he would pay for the tea. Don't we need to correct this part? Remember, you didn't have it right.
It just gets signed and brought back to me. Wait, I think I'm supposed to keep the pink one. Rip the pink for me, sorry.
All right. 4 documents he signed, a lot of famous ones. Can you rip the pink one for me, please? What he signed a bunch of documents, including Audrey. Yeah. Yeah, and 2 of those are so famous that I know you've all heard of it. And he signed a bunch of them. Can I just put my cup in the way? He also dressed kind of crazy. I just need a change one. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. He dressed with disheveled clothes. Like he was in France as a diplomat and dressing like a crazy man. Disheveled clothes, his hair all over the place, wearing fur hats. Why did he do that instead of trying to dress to make America look really good? Leila? What? Leila? Yes. He was like, this is what we're like in America. It wasn't really true, but that's what they expected of him, and he was a bit of an actor. Franklin was. What a character, really. Here he is the way we normally see him portrayed, and this was his sort of French persona, with a big fuzzy fur hat on. All right. Do you think Benjamin Franklin was a deist? Look at your card. I want you to look at what you wrote. And this, I'll take multiple answers for this. What do you think?
Well, what I put is he's kind of in between a deist and a Christian because he still believes in a personal relationship with God, but he doesn't believe that like he could help raise an empire or something. So if I were to put him outside, I would put him as like a baby Christian because he doesn't like understand the full thing of Christianity, but he's not for this.
All right. Another answer. That was a good answer.
He's not because he literally said that God's not caring for us.
Okay. Then that would be a good defense of that. Another response?
I think he wasn't a deist because he believed that God cared all mankind and had a God who cares for us.
Okay. So he thought that God was involved in human affairs, which would make him not deist. All right. Which doesn't negate your answer, but have a good response. Yeah.
I said he was not really deist that God cares.
Okay. Any other responses, Avery?
I think he might have gotten like a little more like Christian towards his life.
It's possible that he transformed through his life. We do all change a bit as we're going. That's a decent answer too. Any other responses on was Benjamin Franklin a deist? No? All right, so I just put he had a lot of Enlightenment philosophies. He often lived as if God wasn't interested in the world he made. That's my, yes, he was a deist response, and here's my no. But he also at times spoke of a personal God, called others to recognize God's hand in the new world. So that would be I guess he's not really a deist. You can defend either way. And that's the kind of thing that you might want to think about for a test question too. All right, I'm going to cut the video and